world, and greetings from a nice, warm summer February day here in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And welcome to Team Harmony's Hate. What are you going to do?
Wait a minute, that's so unfair. It was 80 degrees, or 27 for you Celsius people, when Melody shot that thing. I had to scrape ice off the car just to get here today. Oh, by the way, I'm Ellie, and welcome.
And I'm Kahari, and it's good to be back after taking a month off. And even though it's cold outside, we're glad to have you with us. This is our third webcast where we engage, inspire, and educate youth all over the world in the battle against hate.
And I'm Julia. I'm the new kid on the block, filling in for Angel. And I'm psyched to be here with Ellie and Kahari. Now, if you missed our last webcast on the arts, you missed quite a ride. We looked at how people around the world use the arts in the battle against hate.
We had stories about popular singers in Cuba, Kenya, and Egypt. We saw how art is used to help refugee children integrate into Egyptian society, and we even had a story about a comedian in Portugal and how he addresses the race issue there. If you missed it, you can still check it out on our website at teamharmonyfoundation.org.
For our program today, we have stories from the Netherlands, China, Pakistan, Poland, Morocco, and here in the US. And we've got a few other goodies for you as well. Pup Dog will talk to Saweetie, and we're even going to interview one of our youth reporters about their story.
This month, most of our stories will look at LGBTQ rights around the world. For a lot of countries, this is not a popular issue. And in some places, it's illegal for people to live their truth. Punishments can be severe. But it's not that way in the Netherlands, and that's where we start today. Nia, our global youth reporter in Amsterdam, introduces us to an organization called Trans Amsterdam.
Hello world, it's Nia Manopa from the Netherlands here, and today I will be interviewing Solange Dekker, who is the host, vlogger, and influencer of Trans Amsterdam. Trans Amsterdam is an organization that aims to better the representation of transgenders in the Netherlands. They provide an art and culture stage for trans and non-transgender people. Solange was crowned as Miss Evolution back in 2019, was a finalist for Miss Beauty of North Holland in 2020, has over 10,000 followers on Instagram, and is also known for a TED Talk.
When I had my second suicide attempt at 16, I climbed out of that water and I thought, what am I doing? Why? Why am I letting people control my life? That I want to jump off a bridge. And it was in that moment when I thought, I am gonna live. I am going to get out of this water and I am going to shine so hard and be so happy with myself.
It's so nice to finally meet you. Tell us more about the organization.
We are trying to give transgender and non-binary people a platform so that they are being seen more than just transgender people, that they are being seen for the work that they do. Also, we are trying to create a bridge so that it's easier for non-transgender or non-binary people to communicate and to work with transgender people.
If you are an employer, do not be afraid to have a conversation with a transgender person. So give us a chance.
How did Trans Amsterdam help you?
They helped me to realize that even though you are already working a full-time job, even though you maybe have a very busy life, you could still always find time to do some kind of thing for other people. So everything that we do is volunteer work. No one gets paid. Everything is on a voluntary basis, and I think that that's beautiful, that it gives you the drive and it gives you the spirit to show up, to do all these events, to do everything, not only for yourself, but for all these other people.
What are the future goals for Trans Amsterdam?
Future goals would obviously be to get more and bigger platforms. What will be more goal is that we are being seen and heard on a bigger scale than that we are doing now. So it will be great to get more media attention.
What advice would you give to someone that is dealing maybe with combating hate regarding their identity?
My advice would be talk with people about your feelings. Open up to people, open up to whoever, to people you trust, open up to maybe even strangers if you feel like that, and don't be afraid to just show emotion, because in the end, if people are trying to help you, they want to see real you. They want to see who you are and what pain you have. That's the only way how they can help you.
Yeah, I think you're such a beautiful person inside and out and so brave. This is Nia reporting from Amsterdam for Team Harmony.
Thank you, Nia. Nice job. Now, we'd like to introduce a new friend of ours. Meet Xorje Olivares. Xorje is on Sirius XM radio here in the States. He's a host, he's a producer, he's a social commentator on LGBTQ issues. And he's here with us now. Xorje, have I left anything out?
No, that sounded pretty much great. Thank you for having me.
Great. So, first question, what are your preferred pronouns?
Thank you for asking. So they are he, him, his. I'm somebody who identifies as a gay man, a cisgender man. So essentially anybody who's cisgender is somebody who's not transgender.
So in your writing, you talk about intersectional identity. Can you explain that term? Because that's a big term.
It is. So intersectionality is something that has become a little more prominent over the past few years. And all it wants to say is that your different identities kind of all mix into one. So they intersect. So my identity as a Mexican-American millennial intersects with my identity as a queer person because I understand from those various intersectional identities what it means to feel oppressed, what it means to feel discriminated against, what it means to feel different. And sometimes one of those identities helps inform how I live the other identity. So it all mixes and mingles together to form this wonderful thing that is my own person. And I love that every single person pretty much has this intersectional identity. It's just how they choose to live it out and choose to highlight it.
For an average person, how would you say that we can play a part in understanding that there is intersectional oppression and being sensitive towards people, and especially when you're meeting somebody for the first time?
It is pretty much all about communication. Every relationship you will ever have with somebody is based on communication, whether that's friendship, whether that's acquaintance, whether it's romantic. And it's all a matter of just asking whoever you're talking to, how would you like to be identified? What are your preferred pronouns? And I think by doing that shows an intent on your part that you're curious, that you care, that you want to know more about the person that you're talking to. Because especially when you're a queer person and you might not look how people would perceive you to look, whether they might think you're a man, whether they might think you're a woman, and you might not identify as either of those, it's helpful to just ask questions, because doing that already shows that you have an investment there and that you really want to know more about a person and not make assumptions, because in these particular situations, assumptions are very not helpful.
This is new thinking for a lot of people, so how did they proceed?
So I do want to say that I've been working in the queer space for almost a decade now, and even I have trouble figuring out a lot of stuff. And that's considering I'm very much within the roots of the community and activism within the community. And so I think it's just a matter of understanding for yourself, you're not going to always get it right. You're going to make mistakes, that you're going to possibly say something that can be considered offensive. But it's a matter of apologizing if you do say something offensive, and making sure that your heart is in the right place. And, you know, I've tried to talk to my parents, people who are very close to me, about these topics, and they have trouble understanding. And it's just a matter of giving people the grace to learn. There's a learning curve here. We are all in this place together of trying to figure out how we can be better to one another.
So this is going out to the world. So what is your message to the world?
The message is to listen to one another, to understand where another person is coming from. My lived experience as a queer person from Texas who's Mexican American is going to be quite different from a queer person anywhere else in the world. And that's beautiful, that's wonderful, and that's exciting. And it is up to me to learn about their story. It's up to them to learn about my story. It is just the fact that we each have really wonderful, juicy stories that are waiting to be told. And we just need a welcome audience to be able to tell them to.
Do you have anything to add?
Just this idea that if we can start to get a little more comfortable at asking people about what their pronouns are, asking people just to be kind. Again, we all look very different. We all come from different places in the world. And it's incredibly fine to be able to put our stories out there and just hope that they're received the same way we wish our stories are to be received.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Xorje.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Let's keep this rolling by traveling east to China, where we hear from Reina talking about a program where college students help teach refugee children in rural China.
Hello, I'm Reina Song, reporting from Beijing, China.
Teaching Corps of Northwest Yunnan was founded in 2007. For the past 13 years, this organization has helped connect volunteer teachers with schools in remote areas such as Yunnan, which is located in southern China. Northwestern University's sophomore Tiger Wang from Beijing, China, recently spent a week at the elementary school in Yunnan, working as a volunteer teacher for Teaching Corps of Northwest Yunnan. Wang said this is his first time volunteering, and he heard about this opportunity from a friend.
I really want to see some poor places in China, since I grew up in the city like Beijing. Kids in the mountains, in those poor areas, and they're really pure and innocent. And yeah, it reminds me of my childhood.
When he was there, Wang taught physical education and arts at this elementary school, where students range from grade 1 to grade 5.
They have about 150 students, and there will probably be 30 students in each grade.
Wang said he did not have a bed to sleep on, and instead slept in a sleeping bag. Despite the less than ideal conditions, Wang said he wanted to go back.
I want to go back every time I come back to China. Yeah, and I plan to do a long-term volunteering at the end of college. Yeah. I love them so much, yeah.
Volunteers like Tiger Wang bring hope to our community. This is Reina Song from Team Harmony, reporting from Beijing, China.
Excellent job, Reina. Thank you very much.
One of our regular features in our show is called One Question, which is where we send our reporters out to ask people around the globe the same question. So, let's toss this over to Liz in Canada.
So, my question for you could be, what person, program, or song celebrates inclusivity?
The movie Soul, I guess.
The French actor Omar Sy for celebrating inclusion.
A TV program, The Ellen Show.
Il y a Glow Up aussi en fait qui est sympa avec le maquillage, etc.
Netflix series, Dear White People.
It's a web series on Netflix. It's called When They See Us.
Tarantino's Django Unchained.
I would say 17. 17, okay. Yes, because they have a message in their song.
This is me from The Greatest Showman.
The Netflix original Wonder.
Ebony and Ivory from Sir Paul McCartney.
Queer Eye.
Pardon?
Queer Eye.
Queer Eye. Ah ouais.
Netflix.
This is the Waving Flag. It is the 2010 World Cup song, and it's basically all the countries unite together.
Probably I'd say the song Imagine by John Lennon.
Visual, et en gros c'est une petite grenouille qui danse avec plein de...
I can proudly say that PSL, which is a famous cricketing league of Pakistan, acted as a uniting force for our nation.
Childish Gambino song, This is America.
Reporting from Liège, Belgium, I'm Lina Elbiar for Team Harmony.
We are from the north, we came from the south, we are the nation.
One country where LGBTQ issues cause people to live in the shadows is Pakistan, and this is where we find our reporter Saman.
Hi everyone, I'm Saman Javed reporting from Lahore, Pakistan, and this is Team Harmony.
We live in a country where everyone talks about men and women. But what about the third ones? The ones that are not accepted by the society, the ones that are always forgotten. Khusra, Khwajasara are the common names of the unidentified.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Sana and I am from Kota Pind, Lahore. It's in Pakistan. Neither are we respected by the society, nor we are offered any jobs. We are not even respected by the people, and they don't even invite us to the functions anymore. We are asked to pay huge house rents just because we are transgenders. We are even tortured and humiliated by policemen. We are not even helped by the people. There is no third gender box on any school registration form also.
Transgenders are those victimized individuals in Pakistan that nobody is ready to accept. The government can still not take a decision on their identity. Both the government and the citizens seem like culprits in this situation.
We have many success stories to tell. There are transgenders who do not beg and have left sex work for a better life and are now earning through respectable jobs. Their success stories motivate many other transgenders, especially the youth, to work and build a better and respectable lifestyle. They send us their resumes and then we try to arrange jobs for them in collaboration with many other organizations. Social acceptance is very important for us because at the end of the day, it's other genders and other people of the society that we interact with. So our basic focus is to work for social acceptance. Government should also direct to sensitize their departments, as this is the only way that the laws can be implemented. People need to sensitize in the department so that they accept us as a gender also, and they understand that we are also the citizens of Pakistan who shall be allowed to enjoy all the basic human rights.
All they demand is acceptance from society and from their own families. Don't you think it's kind of our fault too? Because all we want is a daughter or a son. Being a part of this society, I request you all to respect them and consider them a part of our country. We should all fight for the rights of our transgender community.
I hope through this documentary you have got to know about the problems of transgender community, and I request our government to please provide them their rights. This is Saman Javed signing off.
When we started this program several months ago, we spent a lot of time with our youth reporters, giving them tips and tricks on producing their stories. And every once in a while, we thought it would be interesting to talk to them to see how their story came together and what they learned throughout the process. Okay, so Saman, you're the first person we've done this with, so thank you for giving us your time and thanks for a great story. Our first question we'll start with is, were you ever afraid for your safety or your interviewee's safety?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. And moving towards your question, no, we were really not worried about our safety because our team ensured about everything and they ensured about our safety. Yes, we were quite a bit worried about the safety of our interviewee because they come from a background that is not accepted by the society. But later on, ensuring every security threats, then we were very comfortable.
So how did you approach your interviewees and how did you speak to them?
We had a scheduled meeting with the gurus. They are the heads of transgender community, and we persuaded them to give us interviews. And about the second interview, our team leader Pakistan, Sir Suhail Riaz Raja, he helped us to talk to different NGOs. So I selected an NGO from Lahore, Pakistan, that is known as Xorje Olivares Society. And then I contacted their head and they were very welcoming and they talked about the issue very open-heartedly.
How did you find your interviewees?
The first interview was very challenging to talk to because she was very worried about her security, but later on we made her very comfortable. And the second one was very interesting to talk about this issue and she enlightened us with many information about this issue.
Have you talked to either one of your interviewees since the story or have they seen it? And if so, what do they think about it?
I have shown a rough draft of my video to the Xorje Olivares Society and they were very pleased to see this video.
So being a global youth reporter, how did you create your story?
So at first it was very challenging, but it was very interesting. But I shot different parts of my stories and then I collected them and I chose some specific parts of my story that were very important. So I came up with this video.
Did anything surprise you throughout the process?
I was not sure that people would welcome me to talk about this issue because people are very afraid to talk about this issue in Pakistan. But it surprised me that they were very helpful and they came out with many good information.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
I just want to add that I am very happy to be a part of Team Harmony, and I'm very honored and proud that I can highlight such hate crimes in society and be a part of this initiative.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For our next story, we turn to Joanna in Poland, where we see that some areas have become LGBTQ-free zones.
Poland is getting international attention right now for all the wrong reasons. This year, at least 100 communities have declared themselves LGBT-free zones.
The LGBTQ community in Poland has a message for the world: we don't feel safe here.
Hi, I'm Joanna Brzezińska. I am a Team Harmony reporter from Poland, and today I'm here with an amazing young activist and leader, Dominik Kuc. Please tell me something about yourself and the field you work in.
I work in favor of human rights in Poland, especially in Warsaw, and especially towards young people. Since 2018, I have created the ranking of LGBTQ schools and equality diplomas that were assigned by the city of Warsaw.
What inspired you to take action in the first place?
I had occasion to cooperate with so many NGOs, with so many young activists. It is also inspiring to see that many young people are more and more tolerant, more and more open.
What biggest difficulties do LGBTQ plus people in Poland have to deal with?
Our system of education, teachers and head teachers of the schools that are often either homophobic, either scared of our government. Recently, many local governments have introduced so-called LGBTQ-free zones. The school don't want human rights campaign to happen or any non-governmental organization to talk about human rights or discrimination.
Recently, you created a report with stories of LGBTQ plus youth during quarantine and lockdown. Could you tell me more about it?
We made interviews with young LGBTQ people anonymously. The citations that we published were either really supportive. However, there was also scaring stories. Electoral campaign held by Mr. Duda had really negative influence on LGBT people.
The European Union has tried to put pressure on the Polish government to step in, but Polish President Andrzej Duda doesn't appear to be listening.
This was the first ever Pride March in that city. The people there attacked by counter-demonstrators, the police detaining a number of far-right activists.
How, in your opinion, can young people get involved, take part in some initiatives to spread awareness and fight against hate?
Rainbow Friday, organized by Campaign Against Homophobia. The other is, for example, local LGBTQ organization.
What are your hopes for the future?
That we become more tolerant, more European. My best hope is to develop LGBTQ-friendly school ranking. We had many replies thanking us because of the project.
This is Joanna Brzezińska reporting from Poland for Team Harmony.
Thank you, Joanna. Nice job. Now, we turn to the celebrity world. Last time, we heard from T.I., Taz Taylor, and Big Sean. And how do we get these people? Through him, our man Pup Dog.
Just joshing. I'm spending this holiday locked in. My body got rid of them toxins. Sports in the top 10.
Right now, trying to spread love, man. And, I work with Team Harmony, an international youth group. Jack, what's up, my guy?
What's going on? What's up, man? And what's up, Team Harmony?
Yo, real quick, man, I know you got a busy schedule going on, and with the album that just dropped, that's what they all say. I have to take your take on how can we spread love, man? There's a lot of hate going on in the world. How do we bring everybody together, bro? Talk to them.
Well, I think if everybody just focuses on love as a concept and looks deep within them and reminds themselves every day to use their empathy, I think we could change the world. You know what I mean? Spread that love, even if it's on a small scale. Do them kind deeds, because they multiply and you're really paying it forward. So I just encourage everyone to go with love before hate, because it's too much hate.
There you go, man. Jack Harlow, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Saweetie. What's up, Team Harmony? I feel like one way we can stop the hate and spread love is, by understanding each other, getting to know one another, and trying to see where everyone comes from. Because I feel like misunderstanding someone is where, the misunderstanding comes from. So learn about each other so that we can love one another. Okay? I know that's right.
That's nice and easy. Period. There you go.
Thanks, Pup. Let's get back to our stories now, as we go to Asma in Morocco, where people are being outed on social media.
As of 2020, gay marriage is legal in over 30 countries. Morocco, however, is definitely not one of them. Here, same-sex sexual relations can be punished with anything from 6 months to 3 years imprisonment, in addition to a fine. Not to mention society's ostracization and shunning that LGBTQ people will also have to face. That in mind, the community usually turns to dating apps in order to meet people without putting their safety in the line. However, their safety net was also targeted amid the coronavirus lockdown, when an Instagram influencer called out to her then almost 500,000 followers to download dating apps more likely used by gay men, to then expose them publicly on social media platforms. This has of course been nothing short of a nightmare for Moroccan gay men, a lot of which has been kicked out of their homes and living in fear of prosecution.
What happened is that a lot of people's privacy was invaded and exposed, which is clearly not only a violation of their privacy, but also a dangerous precedent in a country where the law forbids forbids homosexual behavior. So it's hard to convince someone to not be homophobic when the law is, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we need to go to the core issue, which is that the law is bad and should be changed because it's discriminatory, violates one of the fundamental tenets of human rights, which is the right to privacy and the right to dispose of your own body.
One of the victims of this event has agreed to have an interview. However, as per their wish and for safety purposes, their voice has been altered. I understand you have been one of the victims whose sexual orientation was exposed on the internet. How has this personally affected you?
Well, it has been a very difficult time for me because I never tell anyone about my sexual orientation, but now it's information on the internet, and a lot of my friends and people I know find out, and they have said terrible things to me, and I'm also scared that my parents will find out because I know that they will not accept that about me.
This has been Asma reporting from Morocco for Team Harmony.
Thank you, Asma. Nice work.
Our last story comes from here in the US, from the state of Colorado, where Maya introduces us to an artist who documents the plight of indigenous people through street art.
It's Saturday morning, and I find myself in the Arts District of Denver, Colorado, where, thanks to street artists like Etta Capacha, the walls bloom with color.
When I started doing street art here in Denver, where the art scene wasn't really happening yet, we used to go around and put up posters and stickers and some like one-way signs into one-day signs, and we were just really interested in how it is that we speak to the greater population, because like art sometimes can be just held inside of galleries and held within a certain social context, And the group that I was with was really interested in talking to the greater community context and what's happening. And so that was really the beginning of my relationship with it.
Patra saw an opportunity to use her platform as an artist in the fight against hate.
There's like the deeper art, the service of spirit, the service of humanity. And that's what I was really longing for. So I realized in that, I was like, what could I do? What could I do? And I realized, I was like, oh, I'm already doing it. I just need to like take what I'm doing and work with groups that are like bringing these deeper messages out into the world.
Patra partnered with Women from the Mountain, a group that confronts the discrimination faced by Indigenous communities.
Women who are really fighting for just education around what's happening and really gaining insight onto what's happening with missing and murdered Indigenous women. So a lot of social justice is support, education, awareness, like opening people's minds up to the fact that like there's other things going on. But when you really get involved with where they come from and what they still struggle with, the addiction, the killing, the misplacement, like the lack of land, like there's so much happening that as a white woman, I could be easily disconnected from. So I just want to like keep bringing this messaging out and learning more myself and seeing how it is that I can use my life to create more awareness. When we're inspired, we want to go out there and do something.
Patra wants to include youth in the fight against hate.
My biggest wish and dream and prayer for this planet right now is for the youth. It's for your generations. You guys are the ones who are going to be rebuilding this. We're the bridge builders, and you guys are the ones who are like walking through and going to be rebuilding what this world is becoming. And you're so important and so necessary for where it is that we're going.
This is Maya, reporting from Colorado, USA, for Team Harmony.
Maya in Colorado, excellent job. So that's a wrap. We hope you enjoyed it. A special thanks to our Global Youth reporters Nia, Reina, Saman, Joanna, Asma, and Maya. You guys rock.
And also a big thanks to Xorje Olivares.
For our viewers in the US, stay tuned because in just a few seconds, you'll be able to chat live with some of the participants in today's show. So, until next time, peace.
Hello everyone, I'm Ellie Barquette and I'm your host for tonight's live discussion. I'm excited to be here with all of our guests and for this post-event. Why don't you all introduce yourselves?
So I can go first. So my name is Xorje Olivares. You saw me thankfully be included in that piece, and I'm very grateful to Team Harmony for including me in my story. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, originally from South Texas. And I am a gay activist, somebody who works in broadcast media to talk about what it's like to be a gay person or a queer person living today.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Esme Silverman. I use she, her pronouns. I am an LGBTQ plus youth member from Southeastern Massachusetts. And in terms of what I do, I'm on GLSEN's National Student Council, and GLSEN is an organization in the United States that advocates for K-12 inclusive education. I'm also on the Massachusetts GSA Leadership Council. I co-created a Shine team with one of my close friends, which is a team that is dedicated to including LGBTQ plus youth in activism work. And I'm also starting up a New England Gender Sexuality Alliance Coalition, which is going to unite a bunch of LGBTQ plus youth groups in the New England region of the United States.
Wow. Well, thank you for making the time to be a part of this.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Topping. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm an educator, an activist, and writer, and here tonight with the Safe Schools program for LGBTQ students. We're a joint initiative between the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Commission on LGBTQ Youth here in Massachusetts. And our work is really around advancing policy and education and youth leadership, like the GSA Student Leadership Council that Esme is a part of, so we can really envision and create more inclusive LGBTQ schools.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for that. And we just got a glimpse of how the LGBTQ plus community is treated in several parts of the world. And tonight, I'm looking forward to talking more about some of these issues and, more importantly, how we can support the LGBTQ community. So let's get started. Since, Kim, you introduced yourselves and introduced your pronouns, using your pronouns, can we talk about those first? If you use they, them, can you please use that in a sentence and explain?
Sure, yeah. So they, them pronouns are pronouns that people who are non-binary or gender neutral or gender fluid might use to signify that gender neutrality or fluidity. But it really depends on the person. I use they, them pronouns because I do identify as non-binary and don't want folks to refer to me with binary terms like she or he. In a sentence, you might say, Kim spoke on a panel tonight. They had purple hair, and I learn from them about LGBTQ plus rights. So simply a replacement for my name is how you could think about pronouns.
Awesome, thank you. And Jorge, I know that throughout the interview in the episode, you mentioned how one should ask someone's pronouns or ask more questions to get to know the other person out of respect. So can you please elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so the really amazing thing is that because of just the nature of the world right now, a lot of us are doing things digitally. And the way we've all done it with the Zoom names now, you can do that. You can put your pronouns, on your Twitter page, on your Facebook page. You can be forthcoming with your identity in that way, so that way you don't have to deal with questions. There's some queer folks who don't want to answer questions, and that's totally fine and totally normal. There's this thinking within the community, and I understand it, and I agree to a certain extent, that it is not our job to educate people about who we are, because it is not the job of the quote unquote oppressed to help our oppressors, however people choose to identify either of those words. But by doing this little simple gesture, we've already gone through the process ourselves. We've made it a little bit easier, so that way we don't have to put ourselves in uncomfortable positions, either us or the people asking. But that being said, in any sort of situation or any sort of scenario, it might be helpful to ask people what their pronouns are, because then you already have an indication as to where you're meeting them. Some people, you might be meeting them at a place where they're comfortable with their queerness. Some you might not be. And in being able to have that open dialogue, it's a little more helpful to understand who you're talking to, the best way to talk to them by using the language that is most helpful for them.
Wonderful. Well, you basically just answered my next question, because that was going to be for our audience members with the use of pronouns. Why might that be important to use them or ask about them? So thank you for that. I guess we'll move on to, are there parts of our everyday language that we should be more sensitive about? And how do you avoid alienating people when you do change your language in a conversation?
I'll just say that there are certain things that are happening, particularly with my community, the Latino community. I'm Mexican American. I grew up in South Texas. And a beautiful thing that's happening is the adoption of the word Latinx. Now, because Spanish is a very gendered language, it's mostly in masculine and feminine forms. And if you're somebody who identifies as non-binary or somebody who doesn't quite like the gendered form of speaking, Latinx is a way to make sure that it's all inclusive. You don't have to choose one or the other. And even doing something like that shows that you're already thinking that language isn't including everybody. So if you're using something like Latinx, I believe there are other forms, depending on other identities that people use, that are also gender neutral. Even doing something like that helps us as queer people know that you're already a little bit more aligned with us, and the task with helping education isn't going to be as difficult as one would assume it to be.
Okay, thank you for that. Kim or Esme, do you have anything to add for the English language or anything else?
Yeah, I would just like to say that really touched on a point about a comment about like how we don't owe people anything for having to explain to them this stuff. And in terms of, it doesn't just fall on one group of people. You can't just say, oh, okay, so sorry, we're the ones who caused the problem for you. Now you have to go and solve it. No, instead, what we have to do is, in a way the people who are the oppressors have to be the ones who are willing to make that change and acknowledge their privilege in this situation. And for those of you who don't know what privilege is something that privilege does not mean that you're living a hard life. Privilege means that there's a certain aspect of who you are that is making you that makes your life a little bit harder in that regard. Like, I'm privileged for being white and for being American because of the fact that these two things do not decrease my chances of having success. Whereas, on the other hand, being transgender, I am not privileged in that regard. And it's important to acknowledge your privilege in these cases to be able to dismantle that oppression happening in the first place.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kim, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, completely agree. And I think it's a really important point around language. And there are so many gendered languages. I think of folks who I've spoken with about Spanish, about Vietnamese, other gendered languages. And there's so much creativity that's happening to really expand that language and make space and affirm non-binary people. And I think that that's just so beautiful. And one of the things we're working on in our program is to work with foreign language teachers to adapt their material so that their classrooms can be more supportive, again, of non-binary and trans students. So just really amazing to see all the creativity out there.
Thank you. And just as important as languages is communication. And I know, Jorge, I wasn't the one who interviewed you in the interview throughout the episode, but I was right there on set listening to the entire thing. And what you said about communication really stuck with me. So is there a fine line of when to know when you can discuss something about the community with somebody who's a part of it, or without making them the poster child of it and making them talk about what they've been through, but feeling comfortable enough to ask questions if you truly want to educate yourself?
Mm-hmm. I think this works in both ways in terms of who's communicating and who's receiving the communication. If I'm somebody who's communicating, I think I mentioned at the beginning, I identify as gay, I'm a man, I use he, him, his pronouns, but the idea that I would just speak about transgender rights or transgender, like to speak about the transgender experience, even though it's not my experience, I have to be careful with what I say and what I don't say because it's not my lived experience. And so it's about understanding what you should be speaking about and to whom that conversation is happening. So if somebody were to ask me personally, which to go to Esme's point about privilege, we're very privileged as queer people to be even doing this right now, to say openly, loudly that we're queer, that I'm gay. And I think I forget that sometimes. But even kind of having that conversation with somebody because I'm very open about my sexuality, just saying, okay, what are some of the questions that you do have? And me being okay, and the receiver of this message being okay if I say they've gone too far, you're being a little invasive. This is something that I don't feel comfortable talking to you about, and not getting frustrated with me or not getting so hurt with the idea that I am not choosing this person to talk to certain things with about. Something that I like to say about, especially when you come out to somebody, that's a very personal choice. And it's a very specific choice you make with the person you come out to. So if somebody who I have not come out to asks me questions that I don't feel comfortable speaking to with them, then I will just say, I'm sorry, I just don't feel this is not the right place or the right time, nor am I the right person for you to maybe talk to this about. So I think it's just recognizing places for each of those people, because obviously communication is a two-way street, and we each have a role to play. And so my role is saying upfront, if you need to talk about the intersectional gay experience, maybe from a Latino perspective, I got you. I can talk about that. If you need to talk about something else, there are other people I can point you in that direction to get feedback from them. But I just hope that you're open to receiving that feedback and not feeling as though, not taking anything personally if I tell you that it's not the right time, the right place, or even the right conversation.
All right, thank you. Kim, do you have anything else to add to that on how to make somebody more comfortable in a conversation about either being the person being approached to talk about the conversation or somebody who wants to talk about it?
Yeah, I think I would agree with all of that. And in my experience, I can often tell when someone's leading with curiosity versus when they're trying to be invasive of my experience. So asking or saying, you know, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Can you tell me a little bit more about what it means to you to be non-binary? As opposed to, what does that mean? You know, you can kind of tell people's tone and where they're coming from with their questions. So I think that's a big part of it too, is the intentions behind it. And we can often sense where people are coming from in those moments.
Absolutely. And I had originally come from a hometown in Western Massachusetts where the LGBTQ community was not very much spoken about. And then my parents moved down to St. Petersburg, Florida, where it very much is. And I got to work in a gelato shop with 3 transgenders, and almost everybody I worked with was either bisexual or gay, and they openly talked about everything. So having that experience to be able in the environment to talk about the LGBTQ community, which I wasn't educated on, and having the environment to ask questions and with somebody who is comfortable with me asking questions. I don't think I ever said, do you mind if I ask you questions about it? But I had said, if you don't feel comfortable talking about this, by all means, it's on you. Please just let me know. But I truly would like to know more if that's okay with you. And that's, I think, if you approach a situation, and that's for any situation in life, if you approach another person with respect, most likely you're going to get respect back. So I think that just the way you approach a situation is how it's handled usually. Esme, would you like anything? Would you like to add anything?
Going off what you were saying about respect, I've had many different conversations with people who have the exact same viewpoints as me. And I've had conversations with people who do not agree with me one bit on anything. But at the same time, we have that level of, we want to learn about each other. We want to learn about like what makes each other taken away, like what our lives are like, what it's like being like this, what it's like being like that. And we could put aside those differences as long as we can respect each other. I have a lot of people who say like human rights is a completely different story. Like you can disagree about how people run things, but you cannot disagree about people being people, because at the end of the day, people are people. And at the end of the day, if you can't respect someone, then there's just nothing I can say to you other than like, there's just nothing I can say to you.
Absolutely.
Like, respect is that big thing in life that really just like, it's one of the most important quintessential parts of like being a human.
I couldn't agree more. So Kim, can you please explain the difference between cisgender and transgender for those in the audience that do not know?
Sure. So often when a baby is about to be born, people will ask a very common question: is it a boy or a girl? And really what people are asking about is the sex of that baby. So someone's sex assigned at birth really has everything to do with their physical body, their chromosomes, genitalia, that kind of stuff. And often we've conflated the sex assigned at birth with someone's gender, and that doesn't work for everyone. So someone who is cisgender, their sex assigned at birth that they were socialized as a child. So maybe if they were assigned female at birth, their parents raised them as a girl, their family raised them as a girl, they would be cisgender if that feels right for them. Whereas someone who is transgender, sex assigned at birth doesn't exactly align with their gender identity. And there are many different ways of being transgender and identifying as transgender. So there's a whole vast community and diversity within the transgender community.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Do any of you, when learning the terminology, do you have any advice to give to someone who is genuinely trying to educate themselves and doesn't have any bad intentions?
I definitely have to say, just like, be willing to accept the fact that you may mess up at some points in time. Because if you are trying to learn, if you are willing to make those mistakes to be able to make more inclusive language, and that's awesome. We need to understand that I have facilitated a lot of discussions with teachers about pronoun usage. And the common thing I like to say to them is, we don't want to create a system of fear in schools. That's what standardized testing is for. We want to create a system that involves people. If you make mistakes, it's okay, because mistakes at the end of the day are part of learning. and they let people, and we want to correct them. We don't want to just sweep everything under the rug and say it's fine. We want people to be corrected so we could foster that care and nurturing nature to be able to get people on the right track to using more inclusive language at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And that leads right to one of the questions we just got from the audience is how do you correct people when they use the wrong pronouns or use a term that you're not okay with?
I'd love to answer that because I actually just did a resource on it about 2 days ago. And what I could say about that is if you are, let's say you mess up, let's say you make a mistake, it's step one is to just take a deep breath about it and realize that it is okay because this is a part of your learning experience. What I could say is number two is if you catch yourself in the middle of the sentence, you could switch it. For example, let's say I'm in the middle of the sentence and I call somebody, and I'm like, oh, that's his, I mean her, like dress. And that's just the easiest way you could do it. After a sentence, let's say you realize after a sentence you're doing that. And if you like realize that and you say, oh no, maybe I messed up on the pronouns. After that, if you would like to craft a sentence using the person's preferred pronouns, it will alleviate so much anxiety if they could just hear the preferred pronouns after they're talking to them. I have a lot of people in my school who have done that to me. And right after that, they'll just say, hey, like, they'll use my correct name and pronouns, and they'll be like, okay, that's so much better. Now, let's say you see somebody else misgendering you. What you could do is, number one, is to assume best intent. And what that really means is just assuming that it is simply just a mistake, nothing more. You also, if they're in the middle of something, you could quickly just correct them. I do it to my family all the time when they accidentally misgender me. It's a little bit more annoying because it's my family, but at the same time, it's still effective to everybody. And if the person is done speaking, you could jump in and say, hey, maybe I think that you meant to say this instead. Or you could privately pull them over and say that and correct them. Or if you see somebody else doing it, you could say, like, hey, you could do that sentence trick and say, hey, this person right here, and use the correct pronouns.
Thank you.
I think there's something to be said about this idea of feeling safe and whether or not you want to feel vulnerable with strangers. So as queer people, and I'll just speak for myself, I always try to surround myself with people that I know are going to keep me safe. And I always like to place myself in a position where I know that I'm safe. Somebody misgendering you can be a very violent thing. And I say that understanding what all definitions of violence can look like. But if somebody were to say, like, I'll just use the example of if I were using they, them pronouns and somebody, because I present male, by all accounts, everybody who would look at me would assume that I'm a man. If somebody's talking to me or somebody's referring to me and they use he, him pronouns and I correct and I say, it's they, them, and they say, whatever, you know what I mean, then you're already knowing how this is going to proceed. And it is our choice as queer people to remove ourselves from situations that we do not feel safe in anymore. We have no idea how the rest of that conversation will go. We don't know how that conversation is going to make us feel. And at the end of the day, we have to prioritize ourselves and what makes us feel safe. And if what makes us feel safe is to remove ourselves entirely, then that's what we have to do. Because yes, I can be of help to you, but I can't do all the work for you. So if you want me to do all the work and inform you about what my queerness looks like, I can't do that. Just because it does go to that whole point of what is going to make me feel like I'm being 100% right now with myself.
Okay, we just got another question from the audience. It says, my family believes my child is too young to know how they identify. I believe my child absolutely knows. This has caused many problems. Do you have any advice as to how to talk to them without getting into arguments? And whoever understands first.
So, well, I would just say there's lots of research out there that is very clear that gender identity starts around 2 to 4 years old. So it's very common if they're thinking about a trans young person that, you know, sharing that with people at 2 to 4 years old, that's pretty common. And same thing around sexual orientation, that's, you know, 7 to 9 years old that people are beginning to identify that, and sometimes much earlier, sometimes much later. So I think starting in that place and showing people some resources and information around gender and sexuality, because sometimes people haven't been exposed to this information, and that's totally understandable in the society and culture that we're growing up in, that we're not learning about LGBTQ plus experiences. So being able to share those resources, maybe videos, introducing folks to other people, can really open up their minds and their hearts.
Okay, thank you. In some countries, as we saw throughout the episode, it is against the law. So if we don't want anyone to be unsafe, and how do they seek support in their country if they don't want to do something illegal? Jorge.
So I think something that was really beautiful in the episode that we just saw was the fact that in all these different countries, everybody has access to media, and everybody has access to a lot of TV shows, has access to a lot of apps, especially if they're privileged enough to have a smartphone. And there's so many different resources that are available just by that. Like just by watching, there's a wonderful trans documentary called Disclosure on Netflix. People can get a chance to watch that, if they have a smartphone and they can separate themselves from a place, get to a place where they feel safe. Just sometimes seeing somebody that looks like you or whose experience sounds similar to you, that can be really helpful. Again, I am saying all of this with the luxury of being open, with never having to fear for my life being criminalized because of the position that I'm in. But I would say try to find, in the ways that you probably have had a chance to do already, find certain resources that you can look to online, and try to figure out, without revealing too much, who you can trust. As queer people, trust is a big thing. Who can we trust to tell about who we are? Who can we trust to let in? And I can imagine that that's difficult if you're in a country where this is criminalized by a variety of different punishments. So develop that sense of who you can trust and who you can possibly, if at all, reveal that authentic side to yourself. But I think it all starts with yourself. If you can tell yourself, I think I'm queer, I think I'm, a member of the LGBTQ community, as long as you can be okay with yourself knowing that that's true, then hopefully the rest will fall into place at the time that it needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's also important for trust from the other person. So if somebody is confiding in you and telling you this information, they're trusting you that this is their story that they're sharing with you. This is not your story to share. This is not a part of something that can just be another conversation for somebody else. This is going to be handled on their terms and at their pace, because it's not your story to tell, like I just said. And I had talked to my sister about this earlier today, because she had come out as bisexual to me about almost 3 years ago, and a year and a half after telling myself, she told the rest of the world. And I asked even today, is it all right that I even mention it tonight? And she said, absolutely, share my name, make me famous. But it's my part as her sister and also somebody who cares about her, that she trusts me to know this information. It's not my story to share with the world or anybody else. So even asking permission, I knew that was going to be her response, because that's just her. But it was great to just even allow that conversation to happen. So give me 1 second. All right, do we have any final remarks? Anything else you'd like to share? Esme?
I'd say at the end of the day here, all of this revolves around two main principles. It's actually three. It's trust, the willingness to go forward and have these conversations, and the willingness to organize. The thing I can say about organization is starting out multiple organizations myself and being part of them, I can say it is one of the most important, crucial parts of being in marginalized communities, is having that ability to organize. And I'm very privileged being in a country that has the freedom of assembly. And what I could say about that is, in these places, you may be in a very dark place. I don't know. You may be in a very bright place. You may be in a very dark place. But the thing I could say to y'all is, regardless of if you can or can't see it, there are people around you who care about you and love you. There are people around you who are always going to be here, who are always going to share your values, who are always going to be advocating and fighting for you. And regardless of where you are in this world, I want y'all to know that I care about you. And like, a lot. And I see you, and I am advocating for you 100%.
Thank you, Esme.
I would say that because of my opportunity to speak to a lot of queer folks over the years, that just coming to the understanding that queerness is beautiful, that it's such a wonderful thing to be queer. It's such a wonderful thing to be able to meet other folks who identify as queer and to meet other folks who are allies of ours, who make life easier in a variety of different ways. But something that I've had to kind of remind myself over the years is that we have had so many different advancements for the LGBTQ community in the United States that it's difficult to remember how hard it is just to even say the words I'm gay, to say the words I'm queer, to meet up with people who have the same thoughts and desires that we do. And so I just hope that whether or not you can be able to say the words out loud yet, even to yourself, that just take the time that you need. You're not on anybody's timetable. It is not, your responsibility to tell your mom or your dad at this particular time. It is not even your responsibility to tell your friends unless you feel like it's the right time. It is such a unique individual thing that hopefully everybody comes to the understanding that as long as you're okay with who you are, then the hope is, and it's everybody's hope, I can imagine, that everybody will follow suit afterward.
Thank you.
Really beautiful. I'm with you all in solidarity for this future. And Ellie, it's so incredible to hear about your relationship with your sister. And I'm always so encouraged to hear about supportive family members and friends. And another really beautiful concept in the queer community is chosen family, the people who we choose as our family because they fully love us and care for us. So I would say for LGBTQ folks to find that chosen family. And if you don't identify with the community, to be that person for someone, which I think you both spoke to as well. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share about our community.
Absolutely. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I'm so grateful and appreciative to have you all here. And this is what we needed at the end of that wonderful episode where we're showing the LGBTQ community throughout the world and giving others a platform to now discuss it more. So thank you all for joining. We appreciate everything you said here and in the video, and we're with you as well. So for those of you watching at home, you can remember to follow us on social media pages. Facebook, Instagram are at hashtag, or our username is at Team Harmony 2020. And thank you for joining this post discussion. Thank you for those who joined from home all over the world. One quick last thing we'd like to do is say happy birthday to our founder, Rick Rendon. Happy birthday to you. We appreciate everything you do and hope you all enjoy the rest of your night. Until next time.